Welcome, wonderful listeners. Today we have Rose Folsom, and she is with Virtue Connection, and she is a prayer coach. So we're going to dive in deeper on how to pray in our lives with her. And you're listening to the Catholic Nurse Coach podcast. I'm your host, Nicole Haugen, wife, mom, nurse, and Catholic life coach. The mission of this podcast is to coach Catholic women who work in healthcare to have less stress. So welcome, Rose. Thank you so much for being here, taking the time to give such valuable information to our listeners. So tell us a little bit about your background, what you're doing now, like where you were, what you're doing now, and how God has kind of given you that path.
Okay, thank you, Nicole, for this opportunity to speak with you about our favorite subject, and that is how to get closer to God in our lives. And your beautiful, beautiful audience. I mean, between you and your listeners, I'm just in awe of you. And I'm going to tell a story later about one example of that. Just have so much respect for nurses. I just can't tell you, but I will. I grew up in Madison, Wisconsin. And this is going to be like such a Cliff Notes version of my life. But I grew up in Madison, Wisconsin as a sort of Presbyterian, meaning we didn't go to church much. My dad didn't go to church at all. He was a Mason, a very high degree Mason. And I was baptized and confirmed in the Presbyterian community. But I say we didn't go to church much. And when I was confirmed, when you're supposed to say, yes, I'll be a soldier for Christ, I knew standing up there in that class that I didn't get the Jesus thing, just didn't get it. But I was too timid to say so. So I went along with it. Didn't have anything against him, just didn't get why he was the one. Uh, I did actually, because my mom's example had a close connection with God in certain parts of my childhood. Like I really knew he was real and I could tell he was answering my prayers. By the time I hit my late teens, of course, though, I forgot all about God because he didn't agree with my lifestyle and my choices. So I was pretty much, quote unquote, without God, or felt that I was for a long time. I came to, just as a side note, just so where I came from emotionally and spiritually, we definitely believed in God in our family. We sort of thought that like maybe 3 or 4 of the commandments really applied to us personally. We didn't get the whole package. I came and my dad was an alcoholic. And his dad and my mom became an alcoholic. Her later on, and her dad was as well, and her grandfather. So that was really heavy in my family. So all those habits that you're probably well aware of that we pick up. Basically, for me, it meant that what my husband's mother was alcoholic. He put it the best way I ever heard it. He said, I used to come home from school every day wondering what kind of day I was having, because you don't know anything about reality until you find out how the person is, what kind of mood they're in and stuff. So that's what drew me to the virtues when I finally found them, because they are a way of actually knowing. They have definitions. We know how to follow them. We can put them into practice. And so, very long story short, I came to DC at age 19. I had a calligraphy business for over 30 years, and I did big awards and certificates for presentation, mainly for a long time. So I came to DC at 19 because the guy I was living with then came here. And then we broke up. I started going to Al-Anon. I started, and so you rebuild your personality there. So that's where I got my big start on, how to act, like what is reality? Who am I? But then Catholic Church snagged me. That's the story in itself. I became a Catholic in my 30s at the Dominican House of Studies. That's the seminary here in DC. I was signed up right after I became a Catholic. Not only did I start going to lay Dominican meetings, so I've been a lay Dominican for a long time, but I signed up for a 5-year study group on the Summa Theologica, which is the 5-volume, it takes about this much shelf space, 2,400 pages, 800 of them on the virtues. That's when I got snagged on the virtues. And years later, I thought, well, people have to know about this. I've got to tell people. So I started Virtue Connection in 2014, started speaking, writing, leading retreats. About 2019, I realized no one's going to grow in virtue if they don't have a good prayer life.
Mm.
So I've been focusing on prayer lately. And I offer that through my Pray Like a Saint program.
Awesome. Amazing. Well, first off, like, thank you for saying yes to God's call, right? Into like educating people on the virtues and what they all entail, because they are like, you can dive so deep into those, but I do think that it's something that kind of gets lost sometimes in the shuffle. Um, and so I just commend you for that. Like, that's just an amazing thing. So how do you, what is your main way that you teach people, that you are like, hey, like, you have a prayer life, but how do you, what do you do? Like, how do you get people to have a deeper prayer life, or even maybe start with a prayer life? What are kind of the first simple steps that you introduce somebody into?
The very first thing would be to have a conversation before there's any question of their taking my program, because we both need to know that they're in a situation that they really, that they need help with, and that they're willing to do something about. Um, I've had some conversations with people where what they really needed was a spiritual director. They didn't need a prayer course, a prayer program,
Yeah.
right? So the first step is to really have a deep conversation about where they are spiritually, and what they're looking for. And then in the program, I already know enough about them, but the program is very, very customized, even though it's a very customized group program. The groups are small, intimate, safe places where I walk people from wherever they are now, become more and more aware of what they need, and give them custom ways to fill in those gaps. Because most people, even if they would say that I have a pretty good prayer life, they've got gaps. We weren't all taught very well how to pray. Many people are shoehorning themselves into ways of praying that they were told in 6th grade, well, this is how you do it. But it's just become a shell. It doesn't mean anything anymore. What do you do about that? There are tons of things to do about that, but so many people don't know. So I walk with them from where they are to where God wants to lead them. And they have a really good sense of where that is. So they know where they're going. And they get there. Without taking much time, by the way. I always say my programs for people with no time.
Yeah. Awesome. So speaking of time, so how can busy nurses, busy moms, like, find simple ways to incorporate prayer into their daily life?
I can tell you some of the fun hacks that I've heard from clients and from friends and people I've interviewed. But what I'm going to say before that, because it's usually not about hacks. It's about loving God enough to desire to pray, to know our need for prayer. Mother Teresa said, love to pray. Ooh, what did she mean by that? I mean, we know that she went for 50 years with just a couple months break
Mhm.
of not even being able to sense God's existence, his presence rather.
Yeah.
She had to go with what she knew, not with what she felt. How could she say love to pray? How could love come into it? It's realizing our dependence on God. It's realizing the richness of what he has to offer us in prayer. And that actually is a big part of my program, is inspiration from the saints, what the saints have said, what scripture says, that speaks to our hearts, that increases our desire for God, our desire for prayer. So that's like the foundation. You have to have that first, or nothing that you build on that is really gonna be nourishing, feel nourishing. So that's number one. Okay, some fun hacks. This is like my number one hack for people who have no time. And this is from my friend Sam, who has 14 children and she homeschools. Not all 14 were being homeschooled at the same time. Some are grown now with their own families, but she's still got a few at home left. She said that well, first of all, she did have a prayer time every single morning. In fact, she went to daily mass. She would get up before the kids got up, go to daily mass. Can't emphasize that enough. You think you don't have time? Maybe we can talk about that later. The one thing I don't want to do for nurses is put a guilt trip or a shame trip, because that is the last thing you need. I can just tell you for myself how much daily mass nourishes me in ways that I see later, not necessarily at the time. But because the Holy Trinity travels together, if Jesus is inhabiting me, that means the Holy Spirit is all that much closer to me every moment of the day, guides me, calms me. It's very powerful if you can possibly do it. So Sam went to morning mass and she'd come home and she would listen to, I love these hacks. She would actually sit in the living room. She had different places, but she'd sit in the living room and she put a blanket over her in the chair. And the kids knew that when mommy's in her prayer chair, or if she didn't have a blanket over, when mommy's got her prayer candle lit next to her, you don't disturb mommy. And she would say, you don't want to see mommy if she hasn't had her prayer time first. You just don't want to know her. And she noticed a huge difference between the times when she did it and the times she didn't do it. The day would just go totally out of control. So that was her experience. My favorite prayer hack of hers though, was to actually light a candle, it can be a fake candle or whatever, in the kitchen, on the kitchen counter, because that's where she was passing through on the way to the laundry, on the way to clean up the kids' vomit, on the way to clean the toilet. So she would pass through the kitchen all the time, and there would be a candle there, and that was the jog her memory to pray for that one best intention that day. Someone she knew was in labor, somebody who was dying, someone who was having a job interview that day, or whatever it was. That was the trigger. So she didn't have to remember a thing. She just had that candle. So loving God more, doing what it takes to love God more, transforms our thoughts. And this is cool, because this really gets into what Nicole helps you with. Transforming your thoughts, being aware of the lies that you're buying that you don't even know are lies. Change it from, and I speak from my own experience here, change it from, I have to fix this now, or something unthinkable, something just the world is going to cave in and kill all of us if I don't fix this right now. Well, I know, guess what? If you're a nurse, that really is the case. I mean, the world is not going to collapse. It's not so much, yeah, you got to fix stuff and you got to fix them now in so many cases. But what comes after that? What do you imagine? If you were to put into words what you really imagine was going to happen, that gets your nervous system all excited, that gets that vagus nerve activated. And the vagus nerve gets activated and the amygdala gets activated. Like, what am I doing to make things seem even worse than they are, right? What can I tell myself? And I love it that Nicole helps you with that, because that's so important. But this is what, for me, the thought changes to. This is to get our overarching attitude to be, this world is passing away. This is temporary. I don't know, those of you who remember the old civil defense warnings on TV, they'd have that kind of horn sound and they say, this is a test. This is only a test. And that's what I think about in those moments. This is a test. This is only the test. What does that mean? It means that what I think in this moment is all that matters. Yes, I'm doing, what I think is the only thing that's important. I heard a line just is it asking God for help? Is it trusting that He is accomplishing this in me? Is it imagining that my idea of perfection is God's idea? Guess what? It's not.
Mhm.
That's huge. So the outcome that I'm able to do and still stay, have the deepest inner calm and trust, that is enough. I heard a line recently that so it just really struck me. I'm going to meditate on this. It was actually a promo for a movie on the Turner Channel, TCM channel, a movie called Lily, made in the 50s. And one of the characters says about the, the Lily in the movie, she's like a bell that emits a pure sound no matter how it's struck. I thought, that's my goal. That's our goal. Because we're being struck all day.
Mhm.
What's the sound we emit and why? Is this God's world? Is this Christ living in me? Or am I in charge of everything and every outcome?
Mhm.
So, desire for God and awareness that our idea of perfection isn't God's idea leads us to be able to pray in a way we've never prayed before, because we come from the right place.
Mhm. Yeah, I love that. I love how what you said, like, what you think is the only thing that's important because it kind of ties back to that works without love means nothing, right? Like, if you don't have the right love attached to it, and just even maybe just taking a moment. I love her. You like she put a blanket over her head and like you don't want to see mom without her prayer time. Like I love that. Like most were like, oh, you don't want to see mom without her coffee, but like I love that where you like that is so true. When you have a more consistent prayer, you show up differently because it's more rooted in love, in what is the goal of any of this, right? And it's how can I always come back to God? How can I always do my job, my parenting, my dealing with my spouse? Like how can I do all of that with love and with intention of that? So I love that. And I think too where you talked about like like loving God enough to love to pray is important as well. And so do you have any, again, like tips, hacks, like what if you are just starting out and you're just like, I really don't like what you said when you were growing up, like I didn't get the Jesus thing. Like, how do you encourage people to be like to start having an intentional relationship with Jesus? Like if there's a want there, but they just don't really know how to go about that. What do you suggest?
Mhm. Definitely ask him every day
Mm.
to show himself, because he shows himself to everybody differently. And it means that you're telling yourself, I mean, he's dying to have a relation, literally dying to have a relationship with you. So how do we open ourselves to that relationship that he's, if you picture the hand, reaching just so close or already embracing us, we can't feel it. um, Ask him, number one. It's not going to feel like anything, you're not going to feel anything necessarily, but ask. And this is so easy to forget. So many people don't know this, but do what's attractive to you, because that's how he's reaching out to you. Is it by spiritual reading? If so, what book? What spiritual book? Find one you love. Read it meditatively, read it slowly. Nature, do especially this time of, well, if you're watching this in the spring, but any time of year really, there's beauty there. I love the colors even in the winter, the grays, the rusts, the browns, the whatever's happening in nature at the moment. do you find him there because nature takes God's time? And it's such a great example. Nature doesn't rush.
Yeah.
How can I be more like that? How do you find God? Do you find it in serving people and get out there and be a volunteer in a soup kitchen? What be in a mentor in the girls' clubs, whatever really attracts you. Ask yourself what you love and do that. I think the very top of the top that really probably applies to everybody is go to adoration,
Mhm.
Eucharistic adoration, and just sit there and don't expect anything. Just look at him and say, okay, I know you're here. That's you right there. I know that. I don't feel anything. I'm not thinking anything, but I'm showing up. Change me, attract me, show me how. Oh boy, just stand back because he will.
Yeah, I love that. And I love too, because like our brains want to overcomplicate everything, right? But I love how you're just like, just ask him. It's so simple. Just ask him. And even that, just like it just flips your brain from like, I don't know how, I don't have time, I don't know to, oh, like, how can I see God? Where is God? Like it does a little flip in your brain to start being curious and to notice these things because he will, right? Like he ask and you shall receive. Like he will start being more obvious, more because now you're looking for it also. And so I love how simple it really is. And it's so simple to just ask. And which kind of is the same. So with this, for the listeners that do have a more consistent life, so that's kind of more like, like if you're beginning, you don't really know where to start. But what if you've had a consistent prayer life, but it just feels dry, stagnant, like you just feel like, okay, like I do my rosary every day, I have once a week adoration, but it's just kind of a checklist now. It's become just a to-do list.
Right. That's so common. And it's so fixable. I would say two things. Number one, ask Nicole if this is more a test, sort of. If this is God investigating and allowing you to show yourself whether you like the giver more than the gifts.
Mhm.
Because sometimes your prayer is just fine. It's always incredibly powerful no matter what. But sometimes he'll take away the emotional goodies to see if you are willing to collaborate with him in saving the world. That's what we're doing. Collaborate with him in saving souls and glorifying God without the feels. So I would ask Nicole first of all, like, this is the situation. Um, does it look like this is what's happening? The other thing to do, if you determine that that's not what's happening, or one you could, God kind of doesn't care how you pray, so switch it up. That's my 3-word cure for dry. Dry prayer is one thing. That dry prayer is a gift, I have to say, but you have to discern whether this is something you should do something about
Mhm.
or just be in that place for right now.
Mhm.
But 3 words, switch it up.
Mhm.
Do something else. Again, really look around and say, so what's out there and what can I try? And try different stuff until it feels joyful and natural for you in this season. I have in my program, I have something called a prayer smorgasbord. And I just lay out all these ways of praying that some people kind of, very few people know all of them. So it's kind of like smorgasbord is what we called it in Wisconsin. Buffet would be another word. Like you can pick the way or ways or combos of ways of praying that you love in this season, and then change it out when you don't like it anymore.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, and as you're talking, like it kind of reminds me of marriage, right? Where like you go through different seasons of marriage, and especially if you have kids, like you go through, there's different seasons of where they're at, where you're at, and like what worked in your, I had children early, so in your early 20s, like mid 20s to, late 20s, early 30s. Now I'm approaching 40s. Like it changes, right? It shifts. And it doesn't mean anything's gone wrong. It just means, for one, either this is just the season that we're in and like that's okay, or to, again, like just try something different. Like go and look, like, how can we have a date night? How can we do it differently? What works? Maybe we have at home date nights instead of out date nights now with the season that we're in. Like, and so it just reminds me of that marriage and how like the marriage between you and God, between you and your creator, right? Like it just shifts over time. And how can you keep adapting to that and just allow God wherever you're at in your life to just work through that? And yeah, it doesn't mean anything's gone wrong. It just means maybe this is the season. Maybe it does mean you need to start like diving deeper, or, maybe God is calling you to something, but you'll know that, right? Like you can feel that through prayer and reaching out to him. And so that was kind of my connection, marriage, marriage connection example.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. That is so true. And the scripture talks about Christ marrying his church, right? And we are the church.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, something that else that came to mind was that, yeah, two things um, to help with prayer. One is, and as nurses, this is so great because you already totally understand this. Bring your body there first. Not only what I call derriere in the chair, like get to that place, show up, even if it's just for 1 minute,
Mhm.
keep it consistent. But bring the nervous system there first. So whatever that is for you, I mean, breathing, right? You all know about that because you're nurses. Do the breathing with the slow exhale that tells the nervous system that you're safe.
Mhm.
And that will do wonders to bring your conscious mind to the prayer. So you're not fighting and working against yourself that way, sort of swimming upstream. Um, and what was the second thing? Oh, yeah. One of the bonuses in my program is I have a series of very short meditations, audio meditations that get you what I say in the prayer zone. So again, there's the breathing is one way to do it, which works for me. I love that one. But also maybe an audio meditation where someone else is getting you started
Mhm.
um, to get in that zone so that when the 2 or 3 minute meditation is over, then you are sort of, if I use the airplane metaphor, you're already moving on the runway. So taking off is easier.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, that's great. And I love to how you said with your friend how she puts a candle on the counter because it just reminds you. And so again, if you are a nurse, you work in healthcare, maybe every time you put your stethoscope around your neck, it just is a little something where, like you said, to put your derriere in the chair. Like it's just something to bring yourself back to that present of, oh yeah, like this is my intention for the day, or I'm praying for this person. And again, I think to keep it simple and not overcomplicate it. Because I think a lot of us, for so many years, I told myself, well, in order to pray, I needed to find a time where it's quiet. Well, with 6 children, it's almost impossible to have quiet in my house. And to, like to be like, okay, well, then I have to really do X, Y, and Z, and to make it like this big production. Well, then I never prayed or got pushed to the side because it felt very heavy and hard. But to just like you said, like where they lead you in that, it just makes it simpler. It's easier. It helps guide you to just ready for takeoff then. Like, okay, sounds great. I love that.
And I would just say that, as a coach, this, because changing habits is so difficult.
Mhm.
Um, you really do need a guide. All these ideas are great, but they need to be set within a cohesive um, way of being where all the pieces fit together to bring you where you want to go. Because we've just mentioned little jewels right now, but the jewels need to be set in a piece of jewelry that need to be in their place, in the right order, have the right jewels in there that suits the individual person. And there are just so many, many things to choose from that I love to share with people who work with me
Hmm.
to
Yeah.
get that custom prayer practice going that is really yours and really feels natural.
Yeah. I love that's amazing. So what's the biggest takeaway that you would like the listeners to know?
Let me look at little. I made a little note. I'm going to just bring back. I'm not Miss Perfect. When I had a job, I was actually a director in the office in the White House. So that might have been a little like being a nurse. I don't know. It was like constantly things flying at me, things that had to be done right. Working with people who were wonderful, but they were people.
Yeah.
And I had to go 2.5 years when I had that job without daily mass. I just logistically, it was not going to happen. So, other than that, though, I think for the last 30 some years I've been a Catholic. I go 5 days a week. I wish it were seven, that's 5. So, that is my number one thing, that and adoration. As much adoration as you can, even if it's just a 15-minute visit. Sit there and look at him. Let him look at you. That's it. That's the whole job. Because he's working, he is transforming us when we are in his presence, whether it's in the tabernacle or the monstrance, either one. He's there, he's changing us. It's what he does. You become more like him. Um, right. So I'm just leaving notes here. Yeah. So, huh, biggest takeaway. I'm going to give you my biggest takeaway and then just add a couple of things to it. My biggest takeaway is the story of when, because this is what nurses need. Yeah, they need prayer, all this stuff. I think this is what nurses really need. They need a story. They need a nurse story. When my dad was dying of cancer in 1985, he was in the hospital, and the doctors were absent. When they were there, they were dismissive, they were curt, they were cold. The nurses, I just felt like even when it was like a constant hug we were getting from them. Every single one of them made that transition as my dad was dying, made it comfortable is the first word that comes to mind. I can't believe that that's the word that popped up, but that's exactly what it was. Because you can feel like you're falling through space. They grounded us. They told us gently what to do, when to do it. They invited us in one at a time. He was in a coma then, to say something to him, whatever we had to say to him. And they just felt like a soft cushion in a hard place. And I have never forgotten it. I will never forget it. That's the impact you have on people's lives. You really are the coaches. You really are the healers. You are the examples of what Christ looks like in those difficult situations. I thank you for that. So, along those lines, I would just say that to be able to give that fully, you're there to be Christ to people. To be able to give that as fully as possible, a prayer life is necessary. A good prayer life is necessary because it's, uh, good in, good out.
Mhm.
And if we cannot give the good that we were born to do unless we have that close connection with good himself,
Mhm.
Jesus, the Holy Spirit, God the Father.
Yeah.
That's my main takeaway.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. That's so it always warms my heart, warms I think every nurse's heart to hear stories like that of like you are making a difference. It does matter. And to bring it back to like again, I always go back to if you're in an airplane and the plane's going down, they say to put your oxygen mask on first, right? So you can help others. But as caregivers, we often help everybody else and then give ourselves the oxygen, whatever's left. And usually there's not much left. And so again, I just encourage my listeners to connect with Rose, to deepen your prayer life, to strive for that, to really dive deeper into that, and so you can help others better. Um, it flows into every area of your life. It really does, because that's what God does, right? Like he heals. He is the divine physician. He heals. And so encourage again, I'll put the link for a connection with Rose to have a consult with her. I'll put those in the notes, and to book a call with her to just dive deeper with her. And as always, I'll put my link in the notes as well to book a call with me to start learning how to put your oxygen mask on first. That's why we're here. That's why we want to help women, especially nurses, because I know personal experience how much energy it does take to be that person out in the world. So thank you again so much, Rose, for being here. This was great. And can you just tell us, because I think one of the biggest objections that people probably have is time, right? Like, can you just explain briefly how much time your program, how simple it is, how it, like, you can do it on your own time, like kind of how that works.
Great question. The videos, you'll get videos once a week, and it's 2 or 3 videos that are about 10 minutes or less each. You watch them on your own time. You have a whole week to do that 30 minutes of content tops. And then there is a weekly group coaching call. As I said, the groups are small, intimate. Of course, I wish they were bigger, but I'm working toward that. But where you can't get stuck, you can bring we celebrate our wins. We get unstuck. We talk about our common issues, and we learn from the questions that other people have. So that's the weekly coaching call. If you miss a call, you can send your question in first, and we'll address it, and then you can watch the replay. You always get a replay. So yeah, bottom line, yeah, that 30 minutes a week. And the videos have been called, and there are other bonuses, but the videos have been called little gems
Mm,
because they have so much in them that is extremely accessible and digestible, but there's no fluff. I get right to the point, leading you from point A to where you want to go.
awesome. Yeah, that's great. So really, I mean, 30 minutes a week, basically, and then the coaching call, which I know personally, I spend way more time, even in a day, on Facebook, Instagram, or Netflix, right? Like 30 minutes really is nothing. And I love how you say like you can break it up, like into different chunks of time. So that's amazing. That's awesome.
Yeah, they're snackable. The videos are
Yeah.
snackable.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that. Snackable. That's great. All right. So anything else that you think listeners should know about your program?
No, you've been very generous in letting them know that possibility out there that could somehow possibly augment the incredible benefit they're getting from working with you.
Thank you. All right. Well, thank you so much for being on, and I'm praying for you, and let's go change our world.
Excellent.